Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over what's going on in the East. We, of course, today are joined by my co-host and host of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, Marab. In this segment, we're going to turn our attention to the Western Conference. The Western Conference really feels a lot different to me than the Eastern Conference does, but in a very unique kind of way. We'll get to that in a second, though. Before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with us here on a beautiful Monday, March 12th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into what's going on with the Western Conference as far as playoff goes. And we're going to start off with a battle of MVPs. You have Jokic and Shea, top two vote getters over there. Most likely Shea's going to win it. Jokic, of course, has won multiple MVPs in the past here, but this series has not been defined by them. They, in fact, have probably had their worst stretch of games, at least for Jokic, that I can remember in a very, very long time. And the same can be said for Shea. It's two very different conversations surrounding the two superstars right now. We're going to start with Jokic's conversation. People are saying that he's not the best in the world anymore, which, frankly, I think is ridiculous. You can't take a short-term slump and broadcast it for the rest of what he did this season. But I'm curious, is there a valid argument for that? Because there have been times this season where I've had that argument with myself of how long Jokic can sustain this best in the world level. What do you think?
I mean, we saw in game one, he absolutely showed up and showed out. Now, these last three games, I absolutely agree with you. He has had a little bit of a slump, but this is also a player that we saw in the regular season. He went on a tear for games in terms of 40-point games with 10 rebounds. It wasn't just points; it's rebounds, it's assists, averaging a triple-double. He still deserves to be in that best of the world conversation, no question in my mind, Jeremy. But this is a player that is. Honestly, these are two players in Shea and Jokic that are just under the microscope right now. These are two players that are being nitpicked for MVP right now in terms of the MVP race. Shea may be in the lead for that, but there's been a lot of controversy in who to pick. Is it Jokic? Is it Shea? Do you go with the best player in the world, or do you go with the best player on the best team in the league? Who do you go with? So that's the question that we're getting answered right now. And with Jokic's performance over the last three games, shooting 30% from the field, I think he's had 16 rebounds and 16 turnovers over the last three games in total. That's not typical Jokic numbers. And we know he can play better. We know game two was a little bit of an abnormality because of how the Thunder came right out of the gates and pretty much blew him out in the first quarter. And we knew how the game was going to transpire. But I think we give Jokic a little bit of a break. Let him show up in game five. Let us see how he does in these next three games, because I think this series absolutely goes 7 games.
Yeah, the way that it's looking right now, it seems neither of these teams can really gather a foothold. And I think pretty plain to see neither of these teams are playing their best basketball. We've seen stretches where both of these teams have played really good, both of these teams have played really bad. The big concern with me is more with the Thunder and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander than it is with the Nuggets. With the Nuggets, you know what you're getting, right? It's Jokic's team. If Jokic has a bad night, they're probably going to have a bad night, right? That's what you get out of the Nuggets. What you don't know with the Thunder is how do they work in a tight game situation. For how good they've been, they are a young team that has not had to deal with a lot of adversity at all this season. They've been the number 1 seed in the West now 2 years in a row. Last year, of course, they lose to a team that eventually made it to the finals in the Mavericks in round 2. It's starting to feel like a very similar series to that one. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander needs to step up. Does he get a little bit of that playoff choker label? Is that something that's going to start to develop around Shea? What do you think?
It's such a tough conversation, Jeremy, because this is a team in the Thunder that I really look at, and they're such a young team. That's the biggest thing with them. They're young. They're gaining experience right now. We saw them last year. I think was it 2-2 as well at this time of year as well against the Mavs.
Yeah, 2-2 as well.
2-2 as well. So this is a team in the Thunder that are finding themselves in a similar position. I think Shea, if he wants to get out of that playoff choker narrative, if you want to call it that, I think he needs to perform over these next 3 games. He needs to show up and he needs to show out. We haven't really seen that Shea 40-point game that we saw in the regular season. I think the most he's had so far in the playoffs is 34 or 37. I think in game 2 he had 34. So we haven't really seen that explosion out of him yet, that him taking that next step. Now, there is another part of this conversation, though. This is a team in the Thunder that are incredibly deep. They're incredibly young, but they don't have a number two, a legit number two option with Shea. Jalen Williams, we love him. We know he's growing into that role, but we saw in game 4, he only had 10 points. We know Jalen Williams can play better, but 2 for 13 from the field, we know he can play better than that, and we need him to step up into that role. If you're the Thunder, you need him to step up. If the Thunder are going to win this series, he needs to. Shea needs to. The whole team needs to, because Jokic is going to show up in Game 5. That Game 5 is going to be crucial in terms of who's going to take momentum in a best of 3 series now. So if it's a time to do it, it's Game 5, and then of course from there, if you lose or if you win.
Right, for sure. And that statistic that's always thrown around there in a series, in a game, 7-game series, when it's tied at 2, the winner of game 5 wins 80% of those series. It's a tried and true thing. It's tough to win 2 straight in a playoff atmosphere, especially when you're going to have to take one on the road. The main thing with the Thunder is they're very deep. They don't have that second scorer, like you said, but this is something that we've seen Shea struggle with in the past. Does this open up the door potentially, and this is a little bit deeper into the offseason kind of real deep dive conversation, but we've seen a lot of rumors around Giannis come up today. Of course, there was the story posted by ESPN that maybe he might potentially want out of Milwaukee, which is a non-story, right? That doesn't mean anything. We already kind of knew that there's a chance he wanted out, but now it feels a little bit more official that he might not stay in Milwaukee long term. The Thunder have the resources to pay for him, but it would be expensive. I assume that they wouldn't give up Shea. Outside of him, you can break up that young core a bit. Does a second round exit for the Thunder guarantee that they make a massive move like that in the offseason, or do you think they feel comfortable running it back one more time with this young core?
The question is, do you have to give up? You might have to give up a couple players, like a one or two off the bench. But I think the Thunder literally have assets in their draft capital alone. I think how many first round picks do they have, Jeremy? They have over 20, right? In the next 4 years.
They've got way too many. Way too
They have
many.
too many. Too many. And that is the draft capital that a team like Milwaukee needs. They need youth. They need to rebuild this team. You see Damian Lillard, he's kind of growing up into he's just tore his Achilles, he's going to be 36 next year. Giannis is entering his prime. He's in his prime right now, and he wants to just be competitive in the playoffs. This is a Bucks team that has lost in the first round 3 years in a row. They haven't made it to the conference finals since they won it in 2021, since they won the NBA championship. So it's going to be interesting to see how this offseason plays out. But in terms of who can offer Milwaukee the best package for a Giannis, I think the Thunder are either one or two. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can't really think of another one. Maybe San Antonio, but I don't think San Antonio would even give up their best guys. I think the Thunder may have the best package for Milwaukee to give for Giannis's talents.
Right. The big question is how set are they in this core? And I think this playoff series is gonna play a huge part in whether or not they decide to make a massive move like that. The Thunder, I mean, shout out to Sam Presti there for even having this many assets at a point where you've been the best team in the West 2 years in a row. and have the MVP on your roster. So that's incredibly impressive. But the Thunder, I think this is a huge series, not just for this season and their guys, but also for the direction of their franchise. Outside of that, the other series that's taking place in the Western Conference is one that was supposed to be a lot closer than it feels right now. The Wolves and the Warriors going over there. The big story, of course, no Steph Curry. Steph Curry not coming back until probably game 6. When it was first reported, I was thinking there's a chance he comes back in game 5. The Wolves are aware of it. Of course, we saw that Anthony Edwards clip with him having a chat over there with Gary Payton Jr. in game. But can the Warriors survive until Chef Curry comes back? What's going on with them? Because they were able to keep it close. It felt like the game that they played this weekend, they needed that win, and they just kind of collapsed down there. Or the Wolves started hitting their shots, I guess. Do the Warriors have even a shot of making it to a potential Curry return?
Well, Jeremy, if they want a shot, they need to win tonight. Game 4, if they can tie this series up to 2-2, going back to Minnesota, it would change the entire complexion of this series. Similar to how Boston and New York is right now. In a different way, but of course, you're just trying to get Steph Curry out on the floor. Give him an opportunity. Just give him a chance to bring this team back. If you can force a game 6, if you can give him that extra game of rest in game 5, I think they have a chance, but they need to win tonight. You had 3 chances, game 2, game 3, and game 4. Game 2, you were pretty much shot out of the water. Minnesota losing game 1 in pretty dramatic fashion. You knew they were going to come out like a like they were shot out of a cannon. So I'm not shocked that they won game 2.
Mhm.
Game 3, we saw that meltdown down the stretch. We saw playoff Jimmy show up, giving them 33 points. We saw Jonathan Kuminga show up. But I think the key guy that you need to show up, as tough as this sounds, and this is a lot to ask, but we've seen Buddy Hield show up in Game 7 against the Rockets. We saw him show up in Game 1 against the Timberwolves. These last 2 games, he hasn't really shown up, and he's honestly, if there is an X factor for the Warriors, I think it's Buddy Hield to get his shot going early on. If he can show up the way he did in those other 2 games, I think the Warriors have a realistic chance to tie this series tonight at 2 games apiece. But they need to do it if they want Steph Curry to come back and give themselves an opportunity to win this series down the stretch.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They need a big Buddy Hield game, but that's a tough thing to rely on. The other thing I would say that they need, and this is the obvious one, you need Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler needs to play like he did in Game 3. But the other one that I think kind of can fly under the radar, and something that I kind of I didn't appreciate enough, is how important Draymond Green is to this team. He, of course, is the heart and soul of this Warriors squad. Draymond Green is the guy that they could not keep going without. You talk about how good Steph Curry is. This is still the same Warriors team as long as Draymond is on it, if I'm being honest, right? They need Steph Curry for it to still be the same dynasty. But the defensive engine and the fact that the offense just kind of rolls through Draymond, he's not going to be the most effective shooter. He doesn't need to be, but if he plays like he did in game 1, if he's able to hit a couple of those jump shots, that changes the entire defensive strategy and the entire outlook for this series. I think you do need a Buddy Hield game, but if Draymond Green is able to step up, if he's able to stay out of foul trouble and he's able to just be the leader of this team like he needs to be, that's something else that I think could really help the Warriors in this one against the Timberwolves. But as far as the Timberwolves go, they just need to keep playing their game. They've kind of struggled a little bit getting points against the number 1 ranked defense since Jimmy Butler came over in that Warriors defense. But they just need to start hitting their shots. They've kind of struggled. They really struggled early on in this series, but they've started to come back up. Anthony Edwards playing really good basketball. Is there, again, if everything goes right for the Warriors, there's still a shot that the Wolves can win this just because Anthony Edwards can outduel everybody on that team. What's your prediction for this game tonight?
It's a tough prediction. It is really so tough. I think, let me say this, whoever wins this game wins this between maximum of 5-point margin. I don't think this is going to be nowhere near a blowout. So I think this is going to be a very close game. Whoever wins, I think I really think the Warriors can squeak it out. I think we see a monstrous Jimmy Butler game. We haven't really seen the playoff Jimmy that we've seen great 30-point games, but we haven't seen the 40-point. We haven't seen his days from Miami where he would just show up and take over games. For example, game 6 against Boston when they were down 3-2 in that series a couple years ago, when he went off for 45 points in Boston. He is a little bit older now, but that is the Jimmy Butler that we know can show up in playoff games. When you need him most, he shows up. And this is his time to shine. You don't need him to. It won't really bother his legacy. He'll still be playoff Jimmy. But this is the time when you need him. You need him to show up in these moments. And if they can get a Draymond Green to show up and knock those threes, like you said, in game one, he was crucial in that game one. Buddy Hield, if he can show up, um, I think it's going to be I honestly think tonight could be the Anthony Edwards Jimmy Butler duel. Um, I really think so. I think this is going to be such a great game tonight.
And I think that's what it's going to have to be. I think I'm taking the Wolves in this one. I don't think Buddy Hield can keep it going. He had 2 really good games, but there's the Buddy Hield cycle, right? Why is this guy slept on so much and then he stinks it up for a little while, and we're coming back down on the Buddy Hield side of it. So I'm just not so confident in what's going on here. But outside of that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, lottery. The NBA lottery was just before we went live, and there was a shocker in this one. The Dallas Mavericks, with 1.8% odds, have taken the number 1 overall pick and the right to draft Cooper Flagg. We'll talk about that coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.